Welcome back. In this video, we are having a showdown between two AI powerhouses. With an eye towards 2030, a comparison on 10 topics being valuation, mission, market dominance, growth potential, management, talent, margins, pricing power, competition, and market risk. Let's get started with valuation. So this is a fairly complicated topic, right? You have a lot of different factors. You have the current price, you have trailing metrics, forward metrics, metrics based on growth rates and everything like that. So here is a FactSet compiled valuation summary. You'll see lines up between the two companies, price to earnings, last 12 months, price to earnings, next 12 months, price to earnings to growth ratio for the next 12 months and everything else going on like that. But what I find most interesting here is we can look at compared to the industry where they currently are standing. So on an industry basis, it looks like Palantir is more expensive on many of these metrics, and I imagine because it is due to the growth factor of Nvidia's earnings. In present day, Nvidia looks cheaper on the basis based on its growth. Now, this is obviously subject to change, and I think it will change, but currently, based on Nvidia's massive growth numbers, they win on valuation in a relative sense. Next up, mission. There's really not that much to say here. Palantir has a much more compelling mission if you are a mission-oriented investor, and it's really hard to beat Palantir when you compare it with any company's mission, honestly. So moving right along, let's talk about market dominance. Now, this is a very interesting one because we're looking at it today, right? And I would say Nvidia has been unbelievably dominant, and that's why you've seen this stock price 5x in the past couple years or whatever it's been. And Palantir is, of course, extending its dominance with respect to AIP, new offerings, and everything like that. But I would still give it to Nvidia, given they have been the talk of Wall Street for the past 12 months and have crushed everything related to market and supply constraints, have really been holding them back. And so Nvidia is currently up 2-1. As for growth potential, it cuts both ways. Nvidia is now a $2 trillion company, basically, and surpassed Google, Alphabet, and everyone below. It becomes a problem with the law of large numbers. So Palantir in the $50 billion range has much more growth potential, a much higher ceiling than Nvidia. Can Nvidia become the largest company in the world? For sure. It's definitely possible on the trajectory that they are on, but does that mean a 5x instead of a 10 to 20x? Yes, it certainly does. So I'd give this to Palantir. We are tied up at 2-2 at this point. Management. This is a tough one, right? At least for me, because I believe completely in Palantir's management team. I think they have done incredible work, and really the future is so bright for them, but you really at the same time have to hand it to what Nvidia has been able to do and really take advantage and make the most of this opportunity that no one really saw coming. And they're number one for a reason. So I'm going to give it to both of them, and I'll leave it up to you to be the tiebreaker here in terms of your personal preference, in terms of who you believe has the stronger management team. And now let's talk about margins. Okay, so this is a tough one. We're going to look at two different margins, gross margin and free cash flow margin. So Nvidia has a 72% gross margin and a 44% free cash flow margin, and Palantir has 81% gross and 31% free cash flow. So I'm going to go ahead and give it to Nvidia on this for the better free cash flow margin, even though Palantir has a slightly better gross margin, at least with the numbers I was looking at for the last fiscal year. So it's pretty close, and it's very impressive. Nvidia is able to put up such great numbers, but Palantir has better gross margins, and of course they're at the beginning of their S-curve, so the trajectory is going to carry that number much higher. But nevertheless, Nvidia is leading Palantir 4-3. As for pricing power, Nvidia, once again, incredible growth and incredible demand, far outstripping their ability to supply at lower price points, meaning they've been able to sell basically to whatever they wanted, and at least that's been the case currently. And on the right here, you can see the world's best investor, Ross Gerber, saying Palantir has no pricing power. which of course I disagree with. They certainly do have pricing power, but at this point, I would say Nvidia's pricing power on a relative basis outstrips Palantir's, and this will change in my opinion. But currently, I don't know if anyone has stronger pricing power than Nvidia. It is absolutely ridiculous, so I'm going to go ahead and give it to Nvidia, now leading by 2 points. As for competition, this is a very interesting one, right? Because Nvidia has a whole host of benefits in terms of how it leads the competition and why it's been doing so much better. But you do also have the semiconductor competition that is now pushing even more than it was previously to take away from what Nvidia has been able to accomplish. So I think Nvidia is going to continue to face an increasingly extreme and fierce competitive market compared to Palantir, where you don't really have a direct competitor. Snowflake just been in the news recently as their CEO just quit. Not a direct competitor. You don't really have a direct competitor for Palantir because they can really do so much with their software and are very versatile, and you don't really have a player that's in government and commercial like they are. So I'm going to give this one to Palantir, now trailing just by 1. Market risk, I would say Nvidia, as I mentioned in a previous slide with the competition, now has everyone after them pretty much. The whole world is trying to get a slice of that Nvidia pie, capture and benefit their own share price in the way that Nvidia has. So I'd say there's pretty strong risk there, as well as geopolitical risk, as you consider the implications on hardware and manufacturing and semiconductors and all of that. Definitely has a risk that Palantir doesn't have when you think of geopolitics and who they work with, and being very pro-West and not having to pull out of different countries or being worried about certain invasions or anything like that. If anything, they actually benefit sometimes from that geopolitical unrest. So I would say that Palantir wins this to tie it up, and they're very much protected and insulated from concerns on market risks, and that's how the company is designed. And so I think that certainly gives them an advantage in this comparison here. As for talent, I think Nvidia now, $2 trillion market cap, has their pick of the bunch with respect to talent, and they're going to be able to spend as much as they need to be able to retain and recruit top talent. But for Palantir, you really have this compelling call of a mission statement, and Nvidia, as I mentioned previously, doesn't really have that. And I think that gives Palantir an incredible advantage. Not only that, but also the growth potential when you're joining Palantir at a $50 billion market cap versus Nvidia at a $2 trillion market cap. There is a bit of a trade-off there and an opportunity cost from an employment perspective. Palantir's talent is just, of course I'm biased, but it's just incredible. We have Chad, who's a Palantir employee, who's just been killing it with Palantir content recently. You should certainly be following him. Shout out to him and shout out to his dad who is watching this video. So for that reason, I'm going to give Palantir the win to take the lead for the first time, 6-5. And with that, I hope you understand that, of course, you're going to have to make your own decisions on all of these categories and what you believe is better and what isn't. But I hope this video was helpful. I'd love to hear your thoughts on what you disagree with in the comments. Absolutely two of the most fascinating stories in AI stocks that there are. So let me know what you think. Until next time.